This is Damla with a drop of I want to talk to you about what is the inner child. We talk a lot about and healing, especially energy healing, healing the inner child, being with the inner child, listening to the inner child. So, what is the inner child? I'm going to start to examine it from more of a scientific perspective, and then I want to carry you to a place where we open up to a wider perspective and a wider possibility of seeing and being with the inner child. One of my favorite scientific references is this study called the ACE study. In the 1990s, they conducted a study where about 17,000 plus individuals, adults, were sent a survey about their childhood. And they were asked about adverse childhood experiences, things like having an alcoholic parent, going through neglect, or experiencing physical or emotional abuse. And then they looked at how these elements of having gone through adverse experiences in your childhood were resulting in any sort of health consequences later on in life. And they found an incredible link between having gone through this was a 10 question survey. And if the person had gone through four or more of these adverse childhood experiences, they would end up with a 4 to 12 fold risk of experiencing depression, drug abuse, and a lot of other health consequences as a result of going through these experiences in their childhood. I'm going to include a link to that study. There's a beautiful book that explains it in depth. There are some articles that you can find. You can actually find that original questionnaire and go through it yourself to see what your ACE score is or what your ACE number is, which I think is very enlightening. But I want to come to, in that study, they actually asked for those experiences for the age range of 0 to 18. So in the study that they were conducting, for those experiences to make a significant impact in the adulthood, their gauge was so from 0 to 18. And again, this is my understanding of it. I wasn't involved in the study, but this is me looking at it through the eyes of a healer. So their gauge was looking at the childhood experience as something that happened from 0 to 18 years old. And in that period, if you think about it, we're still evolving. Our brain chemistry is evolving. We are growing from someone who cannot take care of its needs to someone who can walk and talk, can go to the restroom by himself or herself, and then go out into the world and begin to make way into the world. And then the assumption is in that period of time, we're still pretty much affected by whatever is happening to us. So we're still sort of developing those coping skills to be out in the world. So here's my here's where I want to depart from that a little bit. First of all, for the majority of us, life is a continuum. There is no like you're 18, you're an adult now. It doesn't, to me it doesn't work like that. So you start the world, yes, there is a lot more happening, and there's an increased amount of change in our brain chemistry and the way we understand and live with the world, and all of that in the formative years, probably up to age 8, 9, and then it continues on up until 18. But we now know that our brains are plastic. We used to assume that the growth happened until a certain period of time and then it stopped, but that's not the case. We continue to evolve, we continue to sense and receive input, and then we continue to produce our life as a result of that. And in my experience as a healer, when I say the word inner child, yes, I'm referring to all of those moments from even before age 0. I'm referring to the moments where you were in the womb, because that's a place and a time where you're immersed in your mom's energy and in your caregivers and parents' energy. And there's nothing you can do about that. And then as you come out into the air, into the atmosphere, it continues. And there's a lot going on in those first formative years, up to 5, and then so on. But in my mind, it doesn't end with age 18, it continues. So in your life continuum, when I say inner child, I'm looking to examine any and all points in time that your needs weren't met, whatever they may be, that you weren't seen, understood, or heard as you needed to be, that you that left a mark on you, whether through external or internal experiences. When I talk about the wounding of the inner child, these are the moments in time that continue to live in you and here, that have left a mark in you. And the mark I'm talking about is how you survived. How you survived becomes the vibrational story of how you come out into the world and how you live your life, with the assumption that whatever you experienced is sort of what you expect to experience from that point on. When working with the inner child, I'm interested in, and this can be, by the way, this can be something that happened to you when you're 25, when you're 40, when you're 50, it doesn't matter. If something left a visible mark on you, by visible I mean vibrational, something that continues to affect you, that little fight you had with your brother or sister, that still comes up, that little conversation you had with your parent, that still comes up, whatever your age, that you think about with a certain amount of charge, with reaction, those are all inner child wounding. And I call them wounding for a very specific reason, because it's not your natural state to be reactive, to not be in harmony, to not be in a state of loving, enjoyable presence. So anything that's in hindrance of that is, to me, is a wounding. And okay, here's how the inner child continues to happen in you. You may go through your life and you may have, let's say you had an accident on the highway and it's a stressful moment. And if there's a part of you that you haven't seen, heard, understood, and cared for, that part is going to come up in that moment. And it might be an accident, and it might be a phone call, it might be something else that's going on in your life. It might be something your child, your partner does, or your family does, doesn't matter. That inner child moment is going to come up. And more often than not, it's not going to be just a one moment. It's going to be multiples of inner children moments coming up. And that's where life gets overwhelming. And that's where we get overrun by our reactionary emotions. Emotions themselves, not a big problem. But when we get overrun by them, we're not able to get out of the story in our minds. That's when things get a little tricky. So in those moments, you got to realize that, first of all, the inner child has every right to come up. If you have a part of you that's ignored, that hasn't been seen, that hasn't been loved, that is definitely going to come up. And that's going to keep coming up until you tend to it. The inner child is, it can be impatient sometimes. It can be recurring, wanting to be seen in multiple ways. So sometimes it can come up as sadness, sometimes it can come up as anger. The inner child also comes up in the as an opportunity to show you the places in you that need the most healing. So when working with the inner child, um, gentleness comes to mind, because it's easiest in our minds to imagine being kind and gentle to a child, or a child animal if you don't have children in your lives. It's for whatever reason, we, most of us, the majority of us, for those of us who haven't been too wounded to feel that kind of love, when we think about gentleness and kindness, we're able to bring that gentleness and kindness when we think about an inner child. So that's for me as a healer, that's one of the keys with bringing that gentleness that you need into your life, or aspiring to do that. And then the second thing that happens with the inner child, as you begin to work with that element, is that the children are very visual. So the inner child in you is going to work with symbols. She's going to want to show you pictures of what she means, what exactly she feels, what she wants you to understand and see and hear and be. She's also going to want to play with you. She will want to engage with you in ways that may not be conventional. One of the things I love doing is going into this embodiment routine of first starting with the time in the womb, and then opening up, and then through movement starting the process of walking, and also starting the process of standing up for yourself, and then going out into the world, beginning to interact with the energies all around you and in you and all that good stuff. So there is a primal element of the inner child that lives in you that, for whatever reason, comes up through that kind of non-structured, non-scripted body play, body exploration, body enjoyment. Because if you think about it, that's a time in our lives, like 5 and below, we're most embodied. We don't quite have the words to speak out how we feel, but we feel what we feel, and that lives in our bodies. So part of the inner child work is getting deeply back into the feeling aspect of it. The feeling the need, the seeing and imagining the need. And then, if possible, working with a healer that you trust, or if you're already familiar with this type of work, finding ways to meet those needs that come up. Meet those needs, finding ways to give yourself a little bit more tenderness, a little bit more gentleness in the moments that you most struggle. Remembering that you are in your body, you are here in this moment, but in this moment there are so many other moments stacked up, including all your inner children, all the moments of the past, and if you are familiar with the quantum physics, all the parallel moments, the versions of you in multiverses, and then all your future versions, all stacked up into one. So by tending to this moment, to all the children in you, you're sort of creating a different kind of continuum, not just for the person who's here, but for all versions of you, leading into deeper connection, deeper resolution, deeper rest, deeper understanding of who you are and what your inner instincts are. Because the other piece of this is your deepest core wounds will determine your deepest core needs. So getting to know your inner child is extremely important in knowing that At every moment, whatever comes up is coming up to just be in touch with you, to play with you. And if you don't give it ways to play with you by embodiment, by visualization, by sacred rest, time of sacred rest, and just beingness, it's gonna get your attention in other ways, in less pleasurable, much more overwhelming, and much more overreactive ways. So I want to leave you with this. And I do occasionally run workshops all about this, all about healing, and all about other subjects. So take a look at my, you can go to a dropofom.com and you can check out what it is that I do and why am I even talking about inner children. So, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to write down and I will get to them as I can. And I'm deeply grateful for you for listening. And I send you and your inner child lots and lots of love. Thank you.